Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to InspireOne's 8th webinar for 2017 series on building top teams to create a workplace of tomorrow. I am Neha and I will be your moderator for today. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to introduce you to a few things. In order to make this webinar a co-learning and sharing opportunity, we can use the text chat feature at all points during the webinar. For minimal disturbance during the course of the webinar, we request you to keep your lines on mute. There will be a dedicated Q&A session during the last 10 minutes of the webinar. Hence, we encourage you to send us questions as you have them, and we will take up those questions in the Q&A session. Our webinar for today is from InspireOne. InspireOne offers leadership and organization development solutions to inspire business performance through transforming an organization's most valuable asset, their human capital. In past, InspireOne has successfully supported many businesses during business transformation through multiple solutions, and many of these have been in the leadership space. Our speakers for today are Ms. Neeta Mohla and Mr. Deepak Mohla. Neeta comes with about 3 decades of experience. She has worked extensively with senior leadership in the area of leadership behavior, interpersonal dynamics, coaching, and counseling. Mr. Deepak Mohla comes with a professional experience that is dynamic mix of corporate and consulting experience. Over the last 3 decades, he has provided strategic direction on OD initiatives to some of the largest names in the industry, augmenting their senior level management teams. With that, I would like to hand over to you, Neeta, to take us through the objectives of this webinar.
Thank you very much, Neha. Good morning to everybody, and thank you very much for joining this webinar today. Today's webinar comes out of considerable work that we have done in the area of developing top teams. Both Deepak and I have led several consulting assignments, and hence we use the opportunity to share our experiences with you. The objectives of today's seminar are as follows. We would like you to be able to understand the criticality and business case for top team development. The objective is also to understand reasons for dysfunctionality or suboptimal performance of top teams. Also, we would like you to be able to identify symptoms that surface when top teams do not perform optimally and learn what it takes to create a powerful top team. The way the flow or the webinar will flow is as follows. We will understand the issues by taking up real case scenarios, and we will use these business cases to understand the top team development process, the symptoms and reasons, and also how do we really go about solving the issues. And finally, the outcomes. As is the case in most webinars, we will request you to post your questions on the chat part, and we will take this up at the end. So we will have about 15 minutes or so at the end of our discussion to attend to all the questions that would come our way. Of course, if the questions cannot be answered during the course of this webinar, we will get back to you subsequently on a mail. So we hope that you will enjoy this session, and without much delay, we will get into the subject right away. So Deepak, I'm going to start with first asking a question that what would you like to go over some of the real case scenarios where we have experienced these issues, the top team development issues, and really what is it that, these situations really comprised of?
Thanks, Neeta, and good morning and welcome to all the participants to this webinar. I must confess that over the last few years, there has been a spate of inquiries and assignments which we have worked on relating to top team development. And the way they have happened are through various channels, so I won't go into that. But I thought for this webinar it would be interesting to probably share 3 particular scenarios which we worked on in the last few years. The number one scenario was the back office operations of a multinational bank, one of the largest in the world, which had global processes which were outsourced to India. The team comprised of multinational people, expatriates from other countries as part of the team, as part of the overall organization. The business was doing extremely well, started about 7 years ago and had met all the parameters of performance that were required. had a very dynamic leader at the top who was pushing all the performances, a very hands-on kind of a person. We first were approached almost about 8-9 months before we actually got the assignment by the head of HR of the team, of the company rather, and it was part of the leadership team. And he was just 1 month into the job, part of the bank, but into this job just 1 month. And he approached us that things don't seem to be going well, and I may need your help to see what are those issues. When we asked him what exactly were the issues, he said, I don't know, but there are murmurs, etc., of dissatisfaction, of some of the expatriates wanting to go back, and so on. We kept on, in touch with the client. At that time, they were not a client really. And it's only after about 8-9 months that they said, no, we are now ready to take on for you to help us on this. These murmurs had now become a little more vocal. There were issues which were surfacing. The team was not really functioning as a team. The global CFO had also probably put some pressure on the local CEO to take some action on to see how the team, the senior leadership team could work as a team. So there were no real common goals, etc., which were coming out. There was no team meetings which were taking place. It was a one-on-one transaction which the CEO was doing. So that was the scenario in which this company or this bank unit was operating. In another scenario, I like to share that of a multinational company in the area of pharmaceuticals and medical devices. And like most large multinationals, they had 6 business units operating fairly independently of each other, reporting to their global heads or regional heads in Singapore or the US, wherever the case be. And there was a country head who was primarily his role was that of managing the regulatory environment and getting the approvals. Again, the HR head approached us. And he felt that, okay, there's no team really which is functioning. And he has 6 different customers, but really there is no team. And he felt that there was a potential which was being missed, an opportunity which was being missed by the company when they were approaching the market, approaching various stakeholders as different individual units rather than as a cohesive whole. And the leader of the team, which is the CEO, was also virtually like another business unit handling his regulatory environment. So that was the situation where again the HR head approached us and said, can we do something here?
So Deepak, just to pick on one point over here, it sounds like in both the cases it was really the HR head who understood the issues more significantly. So is this usual? Does it usually come from the HR head? And also, second question here, what role does the HR head really play in these sort of situations? I'm assuming that would be significant.
I think it's a very critical question, and a question which I think the HR leads and HR heads need to really understand. The role of HR head, from my experience and when I've seen it as a consultant as well, is that of what the Italians call a consigliere. You have a Don and you have the consigliere who is a right-hand man of the Don. In the Indian context or the global context, you can call someone like a counselor. He's the counselor to the CEO. He or she can have a lot of trust work with that, and can also be a very strong bridge between the team and the CEO. Although the CEO is part of the team, but the CEO also needs to know where can I lean upon. And invariably, we have found that a good successful team is one where the HR head can play a very major balancing role. And that creates a very powerful team, a very effective team. The absence of that, obviously someone else takes over the role of the HR, but I would say the HR head has a very natural proclivity towards performing this role. So if it does not happen, I think the team is missing something.
Yeah, and I can see that, this balancing role is from both sides, because if the person leans too heavily on the CEO, then it could be the rest of the team that could feel alienated. And at the same time, if the person becomes too close to the team, you miss out the opportunity of really being the trusted partner for the CEO. So to maintain this balance and to be seen as a neutral person would be extremely critical.
Absolutely, because I think it's you don't want to make it a me versus the CEO or the me and CEO versus the rest. But so it's a very strong binding opportunity, And I think in the second case, which I refer about the medical devices company, the HR had actually displayed very strong leadership behaviors in being able to see that opportunity which others were not able to see, of how value could get created through synthesizing the opportunities there. So that was the second scenario. In the third scenario, I would like to share that of an Indian business company, first generation entrepreneur, started about 3 decades ago on the wake of the Maruti coming into the country, and a whole set of automotive companies had come up around that time, and this is one of those automotive companies, started by 2 brothers, first generation entrepreneurs, did exceedingly well and achieved a great amount of growth. And reasonably professional, I would say. It's the second generation family that started coming in, and that's when we see the differences started coming up. And actually there was a situation where a huge amount of value seepage, value destruction had started taking place, where money was in the system was getting diverted to other areas by each of the families, all the people in the system. And hence you could see, instead of value creation taking place, a value destruction taking place. And that's when one of the brothers approached us and suggested if we could help them in trying to see how could we work as one team rather than as different elements who have created their own fiefdom, their own parts of the kingdom, someone looking after the supply chain and trying to see how much money I can make on the side there, someone working on the distribution system and seeing what value I can create for myself on the side. So it was value being created by each individual team member rather than being created for the whole team and for the whole organization as one. Obviously, things would not have been very good if it had continued.
So just to summarize the 3 scenarios, in the first scenario, possibly even the CEO was not fully aware of the extent or the issue of dysfunction. However, in the second, the business units were working very, very independently and did not know that there was value getting lost. And in the third scenario, the promoter felt that his dream was actually slipping away. So 3 different scenarios with 3 different, backgrounds.
Absolutely. So if I see for any organization, the top team's primary role is to create value and create value for all stakeholders. So if I look at one extreme where you're maximizing value, right, on the right-hand side of the spectrum, that's where a team is really most effective. On the other hand, you have a team which is on the extreme left of the corner where value is actually getting destroyed. And when you go into some of the companies which have actually gone down, you would find that probably one of the reasons could also have been the top team not working as a team. So if I was to look at these 3 situations which we talked about, so you see the bank has probably something which was a preemptive. The value destruction had not started taking place, but it was expected. How could we convert that? So it was like a preemptive, a very good opportunity to see how we could create more value. The second one was actually the company was doing reasonably well. Everyone was meeting their targets. But someone saw a huge opportunity to move to the extreme right of the spectrum. And that was the HR head who saw that. And in the third scenario, you're actually seeing a company which is very fast moving towards the extreme left, where value destruction is taking place, and another year or 2 means that company would have probably folded up, right? With a lot of acrimony amongst the partners. So that's the kind of situation which these 3 scenarios, you can see someone more on the right side, someone in the center, and someone more on the extreme left.
Yeah, and of course, in today's dynamic times, managing the top team and the top team working well becomes absolutely critical to the success of any organization. In fact, I'd just like to also look at ideally what CEOs say, and this is a reflection of an IBM study that was done, interviewing various CEOs. And what we say really here is that the top C-suite is all about the teamwork working at the highest level. So if that doesn't really happen, then the culture in the organization cannot be collaborative, and the tone for the rest of the organization cannot be set. And the interesting fact also here is McKinsey, one of their studies, has also pointed out that this seems to happen only 20% of the time. So there is this huge gap, and therefore the business case for really working on developing top teams and making top teams more effective, functional, productive, etc., is really, really important. What, in your experience, Deepak, has been some of those, top reasons of dysfunctionality, if I may use the word dysfunctionality, and also what have you observed, any symptoms that we could, draw upon to say that, okay, so this is something that we can relate to and is going wrong, which helps us then to really look at this aspect more closely.
Yeah, so I suspect that, it's not one reason or one set of reasons which could say that, okay, these are common to all the three situations. So let me try and explore these three scenarios and share with you the reasons. You cannot uncover the reasons without going a little deeper. What you have got are really symptoms. The symptoms could be the teams are not meeting. The teams, when they're meeting, their meetings are very short. The people are coming out of the meeting with a huge amount of aggro. There are conflicts taking place. So those are all part of the symptoms. But what are the reasons behind it? So in the first case, if I was to look at the back office of the bank, so there was a situation where the leader of the team, very much focused on achieving results, and had met all targets which were there, and would have probably, barring few situations, been doing so in the future as well. However, there was a new person who had joined the team, and that person had his own problems, which we uncovered later. But because of the entry of this person, there was some kind of toxicity which came in. That was one factor. The other factor was that the CEO, while being extremely effective in the role, had not changed his style, and so continued to lead the team as a group, which meant that each person was being dealt with separately and on a one-to-one basis, rather than coming together as a team. So the reviews were on a one-to-one basis, the goal setting was on a one-to-one basis, and where is the question of having a team? So while each person was meeting his or her target, but the interdependencies had started coming into play, which would not be getting met. So things would go all the way down, silos and started coming into the organization, and the culture was obviously not of that of a very collaborative nature. There were other situations where some of the people who had come and joined the team from overseas, senior people, they wanted to go back. And obviously this was creating issues in that particular setup. In the second one, when I look at it, so it is a very typical setup, nothing going wrong in that medical device company. Things were going extremely well. Each of the business units were doing their own work. Things were very calm, no conflicts, but no meetings either. There were social meetings. If there were any meetings, they were more of a social nature. There was no common agenda. And since everyone was doing well, they were very independent. They guarded their independence also very fiercely. Now, the CEO saw his role as being that of a regulator, managing the regulator. So he was doing his own role as a service provider to the rest of the businesses. So there was no real team. Each person or each business was the team. But when the HR head came, he saw that there is a way, and I'll give you two instances which they saw as an opportunity. All the units are approaching hospitals, institutions as sellers of their products. Now, what if they had sold these units as one company rather than as 6 business divisions? Their negotiation power would have improved tremendously. Their ability to strike deals would have improved. Their ability to give total solutions to the customer would have improved. And many such possibilities. Cost of selling would have gone down and cost of value would have gone up. The HR head saw that opportunity. Number two, people resources we all know are very critical. So when people are looking for careers, in some businesses which are more mature, career opportunities would be lesser. In some of the more evolving businesses, career opportunities would be more. But in the absence of the overall HR policy, it became difficult to see how the migration from one business to the other could take place. So this was in the second scenario, right? So the reasons coming from there. In the third one, it's a very typical situation. One can probably, most of you will be able to relate to that. So suddenly you found that, there are 3 BMWs being bought by the second generation. Each marriage is being more lavish than the other. So it was all a matter of not value creation, but value use and destroy. Creating my own fiefdom. So there was a shortage of resources in the company. There was no shortage of resources outside the company. Conflicts are taking place, meetings, etc. would not be taking place as often as they should be, or even if there was more acrimony, and they would even come to situations where the so-called team would be shouting at each other. Relations even between the two brothers have started getting strained because of the second generation, and you can imagine the kind of politics in the system which would have started erupting because people would start taking sides, and suddenly you find the whole organization getting divided into 3, 4, or 5 such units. So if you see, there are no common reasons. And I think it's very important. So I cannot say there's a cookie cutter approach to a situation like this. One has to go deeper into each such situation and understand what are the factors underlying the symptoms coming up, underlying the dysfunctionality, or in some cases there's no dysfunctionality, but there's a great opportunity for doing something big.
Right, so just to summarize the reasons for top team dysfunctioning, it could be the team leader's inability to really create an engaging vision where all the members can find their place, or it could be a lack of clarity of common goals or no common goals at all. It could also be that top team members are working in individual silos rather than working together, or a new team member coming in and disturbing the dynamics of the existing team. It could also be, for example, and this is very typical, we say it's an Indian family business, in any family business where egos, feelings, lack of trust, conflicts create real collaboration issues. And finally, we've of course seen that even in the most professionally run companies, very often though it's propagated that it's an open culture, people are unable to really bring up issues with the top team should there be any. And it's interesting that you mentioned that, reasons, of course, you have to deep dive and could be very different, but usually the symptoms that we see could be pretty much the same. So if you look at some of the symptoms, there would be no team meetings happening, no team common reviews happening. It could also be that there are interpersonal issues coming up, lack of camaraderie, of course, ego clashes, a lot of emotions coming up to the fore, and a lot of back chat, backbiting, gossiping, and politicking. So this is interesting because, once we see these symptoms, at least, and we go into the reasons for it, that can be something that can be used to look at working in this area. So that's about understanding the business case and the reasons. I think it's important. Also, one very important point that you pointed out in these scenarios so far was the leader of the team, the CEO. So what? I'm assuming that that's a very critical person in this entire dynamic. So what, according to you, would be some interesting or very important rather factors that the CEO should keep in mind while creating this top team? What is the role of the CEO here?
Well, I just thought minimize the role of the CEO and maximize the role of the HR head. Right? The leader is clearly the CEO, right? And that's the critical part. So, and the CEO has a big role to play in this. Now, for this, it is important that the CEO must understand that he is a leader of leaders. He is not a leader of a mid-level team. So when you're talking of leaders at this level and managing those leaders, each one of them is probably as good as you. And in some cases, you may find that he may be even better than you in some areas. Now, how do you manage such leaders? He also comes or she also comes with his own success behind him or her. He or she also comes with his own knowledge, with his own worldview. They all come with their own successes and also with their own big-size egos, and that's all a part. But if I'm to be a leader of leaders, I should be able to not only manage them, help them to achieve their own aspirations. Each of these leaders who's a part of that team has a great aspiration to do something more, right? So if the leader of leaders, if the CEO cannot help them to help them achieve their own goal, their own vision, then I'm afraid there's already a conflict developing there. So the CEO's role cannot be minimized by any standard. The CEO is the leader of the team, right? And as soon as he achieves his role or accepts that role and performs the role, the team starts functioning as a team. I would like to share about the medical devices role. There was no leader. The CEO was supposed to be a leader, but he had sidestepped. And so into that vacuum, the HR leader came in, right? And that's what we need to understand. The role of the CEO cannot be minimized, and it's absolutely critical that to form a great team, the direction that the CEO gives, the kind of ethos he helps create in the team, the kind of direction he sets for the team are all critical, which will help with the team functioning as a team.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let's get into a little bit now in detail about so then what is done once these issues are identified, and especially in these cases that we talked about. What is the process? What is it that we did to handle the situation?
Okay, so I'll take the case of the back office of the bank and go through that in some degree of detail so that we can get a perspective on what we did. So I think the first thing first is you cannot take such an assignment without the CEO being the sponsor. The CEO has to be the sponsor for such an activity. Now, which means not only a sponsor, the CEO and whosoever is the interventionist must be totally aligned to what are the steps to be taken. So first thing, what we did in this case was we had a series of meetings firstly with the CEO himself. Probably 2 or 3 meetings took place. Firstly, to understand the perspective that person had about the team and whether it was functioning as a team, what were the possible reasons if it wasn't, what were the symptoms, and what he or she had done towards changing the situation. Second meeting went to understand that what could be the possible way we could try and navigate the situation with some amount of co-construction and co-creation of the possible solution. So in this particular case, we agreed, because the situation was getting into some degree of dysfunctionality, that it will be good to speak to each of the team members, have a detailed discussion with them and get their perspective. And what was the issue that was gripping the team from performing as a team? So we had one-on-one discussion with each of the team members. Second thing which we agreed was with the CEO was that we would ask each of the team members, including her, to undertake a EI profiler, an emotional intelligence profiler, because in such a situation we found that the emotions were running very, very high. So we thought it would be a good idea to get some understanding of the emotional profile of each person. One, it will give us an understanding of where the issues could be, plus for each individual it could create a much higher degree of self-awareness should that be required. So that was the second thing. It will also give us an opportunity to coach and counsel each of the team members towards what we were wanting to achieve. Having agreed to this, so the next session was with each of the team members to get their perspective, get their data and their inputs on this. For this one-on-one sessions, we used what we call the TMI, Team Shift Meter, which looks at 4 dimensions of a team, largely. The role of the leader, the ethos and the team spirit which is being displayed in the unit, the directions and the alignment of those directions with the team within the team, and fourthly, are the skills and the capabilities required to perform the role, are they adequately there or not in the team? there are many questions around this. So we get a feedback from, and it's not that a questionnaire is administered, no. These are detailed discussions, one-on-one discussions, highly confidential discussions which take place. But the amount of information you get is around these 3-4 areas. The other one part which you do is to have a one-on-one session with the same person, sharing with him or her his or her profile of emotional intelligence and helping them to get a better feel of what they could be going through and what others could be perceiving of them. I think both these sessions went off extremely well. There was the very first session, it also helps you to build in some alignment, some construct with the person, each of the team members as well. Post this, we had a first meeting of all the members of the team, wherein we shared the raw data without saying who said what. And so this is all the inputs that we have got on why the team members believe that we are not functioning as a team. Now, we put those issues to the people, we put that data to the team, and we said, how could we identify what is it that we want to achieve? Where is it that we are with respect to where we want to be? And secondly, can we identify 3 or 4 areas which we can say this team will be able to meet or work towards in the coming weeks, months and years? So this is what the task the team set for itself. And at the end of that one full day session, the team was able to articulate what was the current state with respect to their functioning as a team, what was the desired state that they would feel the team should be functioning as, with some kind of performance matrix as a team, and also identified 3 actions that they need to take to be able to achieve that task. So,
right. So this is, I believe, called the release and the channelized phase, where essentially the activities that we are undertaking here are a lot of activities to get people on board, to actually align them with this need, because this is, of course, the most important part. To start solving the problem before this is done would mean that the problem will not get solved optimally. So the buy-in, getting each person's engagement, also having discussions at a more emotional level, quote unquote, which is the emotional profile of people, and being able to then slowly move them towards a desired state where each person feels excited, and be able to also call out some measures that will define that we've reached the desired stage is the purpose of this particular phase. And I'd also like to just quickly also go over, therefore, as a result of this phase, what begins to happen. And if we look at the outcomes of this phase, essentially now the team starts coagulating towards the desired state, because desired state is one that everybody wants, and that's where we want the alignment to happen. They also begin to have some clarity around the team issues and as to why these exist. And of course, one very, very critical part, which is management of emotions, which means giving people an opportunity to vent their feelings and also be able to engage with everyone, because often there are people who are passive but actually need to be part of the team. So getting them on board and beginning to start having open communication towards building trust is what this first phase is really all about. So I can see that the groundwork gets laid and so on. But then after this, what happens? So I'm assuming that now there is also the next phase.
Yeah, so I think you're right, Neeta, in saying that at this stage, there is a little more openness started coming through. People have probably, after many months or years, probably sat together with things being put on the table in a very open way, right? And you're seeing the CEO also openly discussing those issues in a very non-defensive way, and each member also seeing it as if we are coming as all consultants, in a very objective manner. So when you come out with those issues and you discuss those issues and you come up with a 3-action plan, and the 3 action plans primarily related to the fact that what are the team goals? We should be very clear. You would be surprised that the CEO had not shared his goals with the rest of the team. So which means each of the team members was actually working to their own individual goals without having a regard or understanding of what are the larger company goals. And the CEO goals actually are the company's goals. right? And those are not getting reviewed or discussed. They may have been discussed at one stage, but they're not being a part of a natural normal review. Also, what are the strategies which are in place to be able to achieve those goals? And also clarity on what is it that I, as a team member, am contributing toward those goals and how. So, and my interdependencies with the others, right? All those factors are not there. So, these are the first things first. We must have a clarity on what are the company's goals, what are our team's goals. And I think that was a big shift. Number one, understanding how are we going to achieve it. And then they said, we must have a team review every month. We were having one-to-one meetings, they may continue. They are operational meetings, they can continue. But as a team, we must sit together, review our performance, hold each other accountable for whatever we have to do as for achieving the team's goals. And it is no longer the CEO's goals alone, it is the team's goals. So from an individual goal to a collective goal, to a team goal, that's a big transition, which was achieved in the first phase. Now, in the second phase, you can't assume in one meeting the whole team or group of people will start functioning as a team. You have to go through a certain process. So in the second meeting, they had that review meeting, second month, where the CEO shared and the conversion from the individual goals, her goals or his goals to the team goals took place, and also an understanding of the strategy. What the CEO also did was share his profile with the rest of the team. Now that was a very powerful thing because the CEO's empathy levels, as you can well understand, were not very high. They were in fact very, very low because he was a very strong doer, right? Very strong achiever, and because it was a greenfield project, that style worked initially. But when the business became more mature, the style did not change and that style did not become so successful now. So there were issues of empathy and he's admitted that, okay, this is my biggest issue and this is the action that I am going to be taking to be able to get over this particular behavioral deficiency or gap that I have. And this is my plan and I would appreciate if you could give me feedback whenever you feel that I am going a little away. And I would accept that feedback. That's my commitment to you. Right? Now, so that was a very open and transparent communication and what we call a self-disclosure which took place. And you can imagine when a person does that, the vulnerability brings in a little more bonding. It brings a person closer to the rest of the team. That infused the rest of the team members, and I think the next meeting, all of them shared their profiles. Now you can imagine when people share their EI profiles, they are showing their strengths, they're also showing their weaknesses. So I no longer believe that so-and-so is only communicating to me in this arrogant way. No, it is not me that he or she is communicating. This is the way he or she communicates with everyone. So I don't need to necessarily respond and assume that it is directed at me. So there was a lot more understanding of each other and people actually discussed each other's profile and understood what it meant. And that gave a lot of compensating behavior started coming into play over time. Compensating if someone I know is getting upset with me. Right? I can understand that person has a short fuse, so I can respond to it. I don't need to necessarily get into an argument and a conflict. I can back off at that moment of time and say my piece a little later. And that worked very well. And that's how you start recognizing a team as a team. Right? So those are some of the things which started coming through by the time we completed our third or fourth meeting with this team as a whole.
Right. So just to summarize this part where we're talking about moving towards a more functional team behavior, what we're really looking at is a series of meetings where we're using a team interaction process. And through the process, what we are really achieving is better quality discussions, better quality conversations, both from a perspective of goals and also from a perspective of personal profiles. And both these going hand in hand and in tandem to be able to look at problem solving, to be able to look at reviews and working towards common goals, while at an emotional level compensating for each other. So this of course would have worked very well, as you mentioned. One of the things that you talk about, Deepak, and it's not been brought up too much, is the team interaction process, because I'm assuming that to get to this, there is also some behavioral shifts that are required in the team. And, I do know that the team interaction process helps to be able to get there. So could you just elaborate a little bit on the team interaction process?
Yeah, thanks for bringing it up, Neeta, because I think this is really at the core of how the shift happens. So the team interaction process is a copyright of IBM, and based on a lot of research done with the London Business School some years ago, which we use for all such particular processes. So actually this process is used at each of the meetings, right, in its fullest form or in its abridged form, depending on how we do it. And I'll just take this, try and explain it in the simplest way that I can. So you have a 6-member or a 7-member team, and you have, let's say, the first meeting of the back office of the bank we are talking of. Now, they saw their issues, so we presented all the data which we had collected from them individually, and we asked them individually write down what do you think are the 4 or 5 core issues, having seen all the data. Each one of them wrote those 5 issues, and not more than 5, not less than 3. And then we asked them, now each one of you come and present it to the rest of the team. So each one of them presented it. We asked the rest of the team that they can ask clarification questions, they can probe, but they cannot form any judgmental view. So they can listen, they can ask questions if they're not understanding something, but they cannot make a view. They cannot give a judgmental view. At the end of each person's presenting, and after the probing and etc. had happened, we would ask any of the other 6 members to summarize whatever transaction had taken place in the last 15-20 minutes when the person was presenting. Now you can imagine when the person has to summarize in his or her own words whatever he has heard of the presentation as well as around the discussion. And if that is a true reflection of what has happened and confirmed by the speaker, you can imagine the person has actually been doing a lot of good listening, a lot of active listening. And when you go through 6 members doing the same thing and the rest of the 6 members listening in and summarizing it for them in their own way, at the end of that session, everyone is very clear what the core issues are and what each other's position is. Then you say, okay, now you understood all those positions. Now as a team, can we say, out of these, whatever number of issues people have spoken about, as a team, what are the top 5 issues? And you would understand that quite a few of those issues are common. Some of them are cause and effect factors. And some, because of the clarity of issues, you realize, hey, there really wasn't much of an issue. Now, when you come up with those 5 issues, right, and everyone has agreed to those 5 issues, they have jointly come up with that, can anyone say, now this issue is mine? I have identified this issue? No, because this is the way the whole team has come up with that. So you're making a very major shift from the individualism to the collectivism of the team. At the end of that session, there was a wow factor. There is inevitably a wow factor when people realize that, yes, this is what we have created as a team. It is not my creation, it is the creation of the team. The same principle also applies when we go into what is the solution. We follow the same process, and when you do that over 3, 4, 5 such meetings, you realize that people have started becoming much better at listening. The second part of your question, Neeta, was that what are the behavioral changes and what are the behaviors which get developed through this process? I think definitely there is the aspect of teamwork and collaboration, because that's the core behavior. People start building on each other's ideas, stop defending their own, right, and much more open. And number 2, which is the biggest possible gainer, is the active listening or empathy, understanding each other's position. Does not mean agreeing. It means understanding each other's position, understanding the feelings of each other. And at the senior level, this is unfortunately in short supply, because I come with a paradigm that if I reach this level, I know everything, right? But yes, you know everything, but you're not listening to everything. So that's what I think it becomes very, very effective in. And hence, this was one part. The third part is around self-disclosure. What means is that I'm no longer trying to be, holding things to my chest. I'm very open with sharing my thoughts, my feelings, my vulnerabilities, and that makes it a very, very powerful behavior to bring the whole team together. Any one of you can try it, and you will find that the response is overwhelming. So these are the 3 or 4 behaviors which we found really changed dramatically in the individuals as well as in the team.
Thank you. So I think that, just looking at a sound and a very robust process, as well as a way of looking at behaviors and coaching people to develop these behaviors would really be very, very powerful in this situation. I'd like to just summarize this particular phase by some of the outcomes. And these are basically a shift from I to we in thinking. Like you said, no more is it my issue, it's a common issue. Development of supportive, inclusive, and collaborative behaviors, shifting from defending own ideas to now building common understanding and looking at common vision, clarity on how to interact in team settings for maximum results. So I'm sure that, when they try it in 1, 2, 3 meetings, this also becomes part of behaviors that can be used in subsequent meetings.
Absolutely.
Right. So I'd just like to summarize this particular session today because I think it would be important to take a few questions and I believe that there have been many that have come up. So what we really looked at through this particular webinar so far is the importance of focusing on development of top teams. There is no getting away from that. Reasons of dysfunction and symptoms to help us understand that there is a problem in the first place. We also understood the process of creating high-performing teams by creating alignment with the CEO and with every team member. We also talked about dealing with emotions, which is a very critical part of the whole process, enabling team reviews and problem solving using the team interaction process, and building behaviors of collaboration, empathy, and trust. So with that, the formal part of the presentation is done. However, I would just now like to invite a few questions and I'll just read those out to you. So maybe I'll just take the first question that has come up. How do we sensitize the senior leaders on their role in building a culture which enthuses employees to go above and beyond?
So that's an interesting question. As it happens, it did come up. So when you're looking at a organization where the top team is not functioning as a team, you can very well imagine that culturally that organization will not be displaying great collaborative behavior. And we know collaborative behavior is today one of the biggest value-creating behaviors. So the whole organization was heaped in smaller silos, etc. Things will go all the way down from the top or go all the way from the top to the down before they would get implemented. Because the meeting ground was only at the top. There was no meeting ground within the silos. Now, what they did was they created an extended leadership team. So once the first team got together and they started functioning well as a team, they then created a team of 35, 40 people more who were the second in line, and they percolated this message. So every quarter they would have a meeting with all the 40 people where they would share the state of the nation type of a thing or what the company is doing. Each member, the senior leadership team member would share what's happening. So you can imagine when the extended team is seeing the top team functioning as a team, it creates a very positive ripple effect within the organization. And hence the culture of teamwork starts evolving because you keep on displaying this further down and down. And before you know it, you have been able to cover a large part of the organization and start seeing the behavior of teamwork coming through in more people and in more situations.
There is another question which maybe I can take up, and this states that during the data gathering stage, how would you address the fact that people may share socially desirable answers? And Deepak, you can of course add, but I'll share my experience in this. I think that the first part of this whole process is the trust that the consultant himself or herself builds, with the team members. Because that is, the consultant has to be absolutely objective and also very mature to be able to balance this process in terms of being able to unearth the real issues and show a lot of empathy, because without that it will not work. And at the same time talk about desired state, because that's where people can really converge. So I would really say that in answer to this particular question, it is really the behaviors of the consultants that become very critical to people opening up. And of course, the consultant's experience of being able to probe to get to the right answers. The personal EQ meter profile really helps. And, personally what we have seen is that enables us to have real conversations, because it's a profiler that people have filled in themselves. And people generally are fairly open to exploring that. Of course, it is done in a one-on-one setting and confidentiality is assured. So that helps us to break some ice, and it helps us to get into some of the real issues which are at the core, the real emotional issues. Once those are discussed, then being able to discuss issues about the situation becomes far easier. Would you like to add anything to this, Deepak?
Yeah, no, I think you answered it. I would just like to clarify that, it's not that once a consultant is in and that you can't do without that. The objective would be that how can we transfer this knowledge and capability to within the team. So someone within the team, and by rotation, maybe everyone within the team can be the facilitator, the role which we play, and then we can easily move out when the team is self-sufficient to be able to carry it forward. And that's what the approach is. So I think that's what, Neeta, you answered it great.
So there's another question here. How and when to handle team conflicts in the interaction process? Because through the process there would be...
Oh yes. Yeah. So I think that's it's a very common occurrence. In fact, that's one of the reasons when dysfunctionality starts happening. And even in the case, or all the three cases which I would say, and in every situation, there would be a conflict. There would be an interpersonal conflict between one or two members, and it could be more than that as well. I think number one is to be able to give that feedback to that each person. What is it that others are saying about that situation? So, for example, in the bank situation I was referring to, and I mentioned there was one person who was being seen as a person who was spreading a lot of toxicity. It came up through the EI profile feedback as well. And I think understanding from him, one could see whatever the insecurities he was going through. And unless we made him feel comfortable, he would probably not be able to change his own behavior. Actually, with that person, with his consent and the consent of the CEO, we went through a 6-month-long coaching session just for that person. Because if he was to be a successful member of the team, then he had to make that kind of effort to change his behavior, which was coming in the way and creating toxicity in the system. And the company agreed to invest because he was a critical member of the team. And you can obviously say that, okay, he's now no longer a member of the team. That's probably not such an easy solution. But it's a good solution to say, how can we help this team member get over that particular factor, which is a behavior which is reducing value. Successfully it was done, but it takes special effort. So you can see there are two dynamics here. One is the issue of the working of a team as a whole, which we do through the team interaction process. And the other is the individual member. Each individual member of the team, some of them may require special focus, special attention, and you have to handle that. If two people are having a conflict with each other, you will find that the self-disclosure when they have on the EI profile helps them to understand each other's situation far better. And I think after that stage, if you get them together and help them to put down what the issues were, you would see that they are much open to listening to each other and much more open to helping each other come up with a resolution. Now, having said that, there will still be issues which go unresolved. And those situations may sometimes call for tough decisions to be taken by the leader of the team. And that also does happen.
So we'll take the last two questions. I'll take one and then I'll just hand it over to you, Deepak. So one of the questions that has come about is about a little bit more information on what is the PEQM and teamship meter, possibly from the slides that we had shared. So both these are proprietary tools from one of our global partners, TMI. For PEQM is your personal EQ meter, which actually is a tool where people have an understanding of their emotional intelligence profile. And the teamship meter is really a meter or a questionnaire. We don't use it as a questionnaire as Deepak had discussed earlier, but we use the questions to understand issues. And the questions are around the four areas. The first one is about the leadership itself. The second is the ethos or the climate in the team. The third is around the skills that people have or don't have to solve issues. And the fourth one is around the direction. So these are the four areas, around which questions are framed, and we use these questions to get to the bottom of where the issues are really coming from. And we'll take the last question now, which is, so this is about the owner or promoter. So all what is seen is that the owner and promoter, the environment that the owner and promoter create, the pace of change is very slow and acceptability of new is very low. The resistance is at the leadership, the highest leadership levels. So what are your thoughts on how this could be managed?
Yeah, so I think this is that classical transition point which makes a company go from small to big, or let it be small and maybe go into oblivion at some stage or the other. And if that transition is not handled appropriately and at the right time, it's not going to make things any better. So for us promoters to be able to do that, I think there is a certain amount of, how shall I put it, understanding and a vision of what I want to achieve. And if I have a vision which is bigger and not control, which is dictating my action, because if I want control over what I have, then that is not going to help me to make the business bigger. So if I have a bigger vision for it, my job really then is, can I create a team which is infused with that vision? Can I transfer this vision to my first team? I think that's the biggest challenge. And for doing that, I must know which are the behaviors which I'm going to let go of, which can come in the way. So like I gave you the example of the bank situation, it was a very entrepreneurial approach at the right time, worked very well. But the same approach became counterproductive when the business matured and there was a growth at a certain level and operations at a certain level which were to be made. It required more shedding and sharing of power, sharing of authority. And when that does not happen, then certainly the growth of the business is likely to get retarded.
So the positivity, building positivity in these situations and moving the CEO to positivity is possibly one of the ways in which to handle this particular issue of change. With that, I would like to thank all the participants for being here with us today, and I hope that this has been valuable. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Neeta. Thank you, Deepak, for sharing your valuable inputs with us today. I would like to make a quick announcement. We have an event coming up in the month of February for EI Assessment Tool Certification. If anyone is interested, please feel free to get in touch with us. For the remaining questions, we will be answering them over email since we have run out of time. And some of the questions did mention about the PPT as well as the recording. The recording as well as the presentation will be shared with everyone who's registered. Thank you so much.